It's time to step back and reassess this Colts free agent class, guys. Let's get to it.
You are Locked On Colts, your daily Indianapolis Colts podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Thank you all for tuning in and making us your first listen of the day. This is your daily podcast covering your Indianapolis Colts, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. This episode is brought to you by Ultimate Football GM. If you've ever dreamed of becoming an NFL GM and managing your football franchise, then this game is definitely for you. To download the game, just visit ultimate-gm.com or look it up in the app stores. Our listeners get a 100% free boost to their franchise when using promo code LOCKEDON in all caps in the game store. I'm Zach Hicks. I'm joined today by Andrew Moore, and it would be helpful if I actually put up our display names. So if you guys are watching on YouTube, I just threw it up there. Zach Hicks and Andrew Moore. Andrew's joining in, replacing Jake because Jake has to be up and early tomorrow. He's going to be at that Ohio State Pro Day that apparently the whole Carolina Panthers front office is going to be at. Like every single person who's ever even stepped foot into the Carolina Panthers front office is going to be at that Pro Day. So Jake will be somewhere in the background. But filling in today is Andrew Moore, the clean shaven on the head Andrew Moore now, joining the Bald Brotherhood. Next up, you just got to get a bunch of hats like I do, Andrew, and then you'll be good to go.
Listen, when I was covering up the male pattern baldness that was happening in my life, I was able to stock up on hats. So I've got plenty of hats, but hey, while we're bald and beautiful, we're gonna rock it.
Yes, for sure. I got to shave mine again so I can match it here. But yeah, guys, we're gonna have a little bit of fun on today's episode. You know, the Colts are. Actually, today they kind of ruined my idea a little bit, but I'm going to still roll with it where I was like, hey, look, the Colts are in a little bit of a lull in their free agency. Let's kind of reassess what they've got going on. Let's look at the guys that they have signed from other teams. Let's look at the roster itself and see where the holes are, and then look at some available free agents we still like. So despite them still signing guy today, we're still going to roll with this, guys, and we're going to start with the new free agent signing, Isaiah McKenzie, wide receiver from the Buffalo Bills. At best, he's a perfect replacement for Paris Campbell. At worst, he's a better Kiki Cootie there at the end of the roster. So, Andrew, letter grade, A, B, C, D, E, F. What do you think about the Isaiah McKenzie signing?
I think I'd probably give it a B. I think it's a solid signing. Definitely adds depth to a wide receiver room that really needs it, especially when you're looking at Ashton Dulin as possibly wide receiver 3. And I know we all love Ashton Dulin here, but if Ashton Dulin is your wide receiver 3, I think you can do a little bit better. But yeah, I think Isaiah McKinney is a guy that you can put in the slot. He's very quick. He's got burst. I was honestly kind of surprised because we all know how Chris Ballard doesn't typically go for smaller wide receivers, and Isaiah McKenzie is 5'8" on a good day, 170 pounds. But I like it. I do. I think he can do wonders in the slot. I think Shane Steichen is going to use him on deep routes a little bit more, something that you kind of detailed in your film room on him. But I think on a good day or at his height, I think he could be a solid replacement for Paris Campbell.
Yeah. A couple more notes to throw in there by Isaiah McKenzie. Mostly kind of an underneath guy with the Buffalo Bills. He didn't really run too many routes down the field, but when he did, those deep crossers and stuff, he was phenomenal with the Bills. He had some really good highlights. I think there was a Patriots game in 2021 where he had like 150 yards receiving. He had some really, really strong games there for the Bills. The unfortunate part is, like last year, he was their starting slot, and I think in 66 targets, he had 6 drops. So like a 10% drop rate, that's not super consistent. So I'm with you. I gave it a B. I think you get your day one punt returner. Hopefully he's wide receiver 4 and not your starting slot, but you could do worse at slot. Like we've seen worse before. It's just, I would still like a little bit better there. So I'm with you on that. I have a B. Their next guy here, Samson Ebukam, and that is how you say his name. I heard him say it now. It's Samson Ebukam. Okay? We got it now, guys. We got it down pat. Jake will still mess it up, but I promise I will do my best to practice this every day. Samson Ebukam, pass rusher from the San Francisco 49ers. I love this signing personally. Andrew, what do you think about it?
See, I've been going back and forth between Ebukam, like just trying to listen and find out how do you actually say this guy's name. But Samson Ebukam, I would give it a solid A-, honestly, A- to B+. I think he is going to really shock some people. And I know a lot of people have seen this on Twitter, and this is kind of what I thought myself when I saw the signing. It reminds you of the Danico Autry signing, in that here's a guy that he's been on quality teams throughout his career, just hasn't had a chance to really shine, or he's like on the cusp of really having that breakout. And I could see Ebukam coming in here being a guy that gets, I don't think he's going to be necessarily maybe a double-digit sack guy, but I think you could come in, maybe get 8 or 9 sacks if he's out in that Leo, that wide 9 stance that Gus Bradley likes to put his defensive ends out there, and I think he's gonna surprise a lot of people. This is an under the radar signing, I should say, that I think a lot of Colts fans are going to be huge fans of once we get into November and December and we see Samson Ebukam really come on.
Yeah, Andrew is stealing my notes here. I have A- as well for this one. I'm a really big fan. I think he just fits much better than Yannick Ngakoue did last year, where Ebukam is the guy who's going to get constant pressure, constantly pinch that edge, and he's also a pretty solid run defender as well. You know, he's not going to be a guy who is going to be your Von Miller to your Aaron Donald to get 20 sacks, but he can be a guy who gets 6, 7, 8 sacks and just provides constant pressure off of the edge. So that's exactly what this team needed. Getting to the next guy, though, Gardner Minshew. Now, this is what we really needed right here, is Gardner Minshew. They got him pretty cheap, too, Andrew. What do you think about this one?
I'm gonna go with B+ on this one. I might be a little bit higher on Gardner Minshew than some people. I know I've seen a lot of people asking, well, why haven't they gone after a certain quarterback over in Baltimore? But we're not going to get into that today. But I think if you're looking for a guy that is capable of being your bridge quarterback if you need him, or he can also be a quality veteran backup, Gardner Minshew was the perfect fit. I know we've been talking about this guy since Shane Steichen was hired as the head coach of the Indianapolis Colts. He's been in Shane Steichen's system for 2 years. He's a great locker room guy. It's hard to find any teammate that has a single bad word to say about Gardner Minshew, and he's very selfless too. You're not going to get a guy that comes into the quarterback room and says, well, I don't care who they bring in, I'm going to focus on me. It's not my job to help that person. And that's kind of rare to see from a quarterback who's as young as Gardner Minshew, because he's only going into his 5th year. So very mature quarterback. I think he knows his role with this team and what it can possibly be. And he's just here to help his team how he can. So I would go solid B+.
Yeah, again, stealing my notes. I did B+ as well for Gardner Minshew. I think, especially when you factor in the price, because the going rate for high-level backups is around $6 to $7 million a year. The Colts get him for 1 year, $3.5 million. Obviously, that can extend up to $5.5 million with the escalators if he is the starter this season. But yeah, I'm a big fan of Gardner Minshew. I think he does a lot of good things. I think he's a high-level backup, and the Colts got him for a very nice price. We're going to rapid fire through these last 2 guys here. Taven Bryan, they got from the Cleveland Browns, defensive tackle. What do you think about Taven Bryan?
Taven Bryan, I'd probably say about a C-, to be honest. I think he's a solid depth piece, but as far as an impact, he's not going to have too big of an impact. He seems like he's more of a pass rushing defensive tackle than a guy that you'd want defending against the run. Just looking at some of his Pro Football Focus grades, a former first round pick that has kind of bounced around, but I think he can provide solid depth. We'll just kind of have to see if he can put it all together.
Yeah, I agree. I said C+ for mine just because I can see that explosiveness being used on stunts and twists and just adding a little bit that way. But as of right now, you have a guy who's a defensive tackle, not a good run defender, and also doesn't really offer too much as a pass rusher outside of that explosiveness. I still think this is better depth than Curtis Brooks was last year, or even maybe Eric Johnson, some other guys that were in here. But I'm still not a huge fan of this signing. It's kind of just a minor depth signing. So It is what it is. Now the last one, my favorite, a kicker, Matt Gay from the Los Angeles Rams, the first signing of the offseason. Andrew, what do you think about the kicker signing?
Give me a B+ on this one. I mean, yeah, it's an expensive contract for a kicker. I think he's now the second highest paid kicker in the league, but man, it's going to be nice not really having to worry about a kicker going out there like we have the past 4 years now in Rodrigo Blankenship, Michael Badgley. Chase McLaughlin was pretty good last year, but Matt Gay has been exceptional. And Chris Ballard, I think, was sick of having to worry about the kicking game. And when you have someone that's one of the best at their position available on the free agent market, he's worth the money. So solid B+ for Matt Gay. I'm excited to see the kicking game be a non-worry in Indianapolis again.
Yeah, now, so contractually, I have to say this is an F move by the Colts because contractually, I just am supposed to hate kickers, but I'm going to reserve judgment. I know that we are wrongfully judging this class way too early because that's just what we do. We're people who make content. So, we have to judge this stuff early. But with a kicker, I'm firmly in wait and see because I just don't trust kickers. You never know. Like, you could have the greatest kicker of all time, and then one day they are just the worst thing ever. So I'm going to reserve judgment, do the Reddit remind me thing in 4 years, and then I'll come back with my actual grade on this signing here. But Matt Gay, look, if he makes me never have to worry about a kicker again, A++, but we'll see. We'll see. Coming up, guys, we're going to talk about the holes on this Colts depth chart and some really concerning, starters in certain places here. But first, the NCAA tournament is heating up, and now is the perfect time to download FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook, because new customers get a no-sweat first bet up to $1,000. That's bonus bets back if your first bet doesn't win. Just download the FanDuel Sportsbook app. It's safe, secure, and super easy to use. Then you can bet on everything from the money line to point scores or threes drained. Plus, FanDuel even lets you combine your bets for a chance at a bigger payout with same-game parlay. So don't miss the chance to get your no-sweat first bet up to $1,000 with bonus bets when you go to FanDuel.com/lockedon. That's FanDuel.com/lockedon to learn more. Make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sports betting partner of the NBA. All right, Andrew. So we're going to talk about a couple concerning depth chart spots, and I think you guys all know which position we're going to start with here. It's obviously cornerback. Cornerback, as of right now, our #1 corner in Indy next year is Isaiah Rodgers Sr. I completely agree. No changes there. Perfect. But honestly, Isaiah Rodgers Sr., I'd love for him to be a starter next season, but maybe not #1. I mean, look, if he is #1, I'm cool with it. But, when I read the rest of this depth chart, you guys will understand. So Isaiah Rodgers Sr. starting on the outside, and then in 2 corner sets, Kenny Moore II as of right now. We don't know if he's going to be here by the end of the offseason. And then when they go into 3 corners, like the nickel and dime packages, Dallas Flowers is our other outside starting corner. And then the depth behind them right now is Tony Brown, who just re-signed with the team, Kevin Tolliver, a former undrafted free agent who signed a couple weeks ago, David Vereen, and Darrell Baker Jr. Now, if you can tell me anything about those guys, Andrew, I'm all ears. But this has to be the worst cornerback room. I mean, I guess Isaiah Rodgers Sr. and Kenny Moore II are, they're good players. So maybe not the worst in the league, but like depth-wise, this has to be the worst depth in the league right now.
If one of those guys goes down with a twisted ankle, I mean, the Colts are going to give up 50 points. It's not looking good. This is something that the Colts desperately need to address. I see them going out and getting a veteran free agent as well as addressing it in the draft, maybe as early as that number 35 pick. It's a little bit worrisome because when you look at this defense, I feel comfortable with pretty much every single position group except the cornerback position. And we know how important Stephon Gilmore was to this team a year ago. Now you take him away, possibly still taking Kenny Moore II away. I know he didn't play up to how he did in 2021, but he's still a talented cornerback out there. So it's going to be interesting to see what the Colts do over the coming weeks and coming months to really address that position and get it up to the standard that I know that Gus Bradley wants his defense to play.
Yeah, in this last segment, guys, coming up, we're going to talk about potential replacements in free agency. But as of right now, woof, like they absolutely just need more bodies there. Like, look, if we thought that guys like Brandon Faison were a struggle out there and look concerning, just wait until David Vereen takes some snaps out there. Knowing my luck that David Vereen's going to become like this all-pro, like undrafted find or whatever. But yeah, I'm just saying, like, if we thought Brandon Faison was concerning, wait until some of these other guys go out there. It's rough waters right there at corner. Going to the next position of worry, and this is a position where, in the end of season presser, Chris Ballard personally took responsibility for not addressing the offensive line properly and not getting more competition, not getting more quality competition in to make sure they had the best 5 guys on the field. And so far this offseason, we have no offensive line signings. And right now at right guard, the depth chart is Will Fries, then Danny Pinter behind him, and Arlington Hambright, which amazing name. I mean, perfect offensive line name, but I don't know if he's quality depth that we would say right now. And obviously Danny Pinter, we don't view as a guard. So really it's just Will Fries at right guard. And I love me some Will Fries, but you got to at least get some veteran competition here, right, Andrew?
Oh, you have to. I think Chris Ballard, he would be doing a malpractice to this team if he didn't bring in some veteran competition for Will Fries. And I think we saw Will Fries begin to kind of bring it on towards the end of the year. He certainly improved throughout the year, but if you don't bring in competition, you're basically daring yourself of repeating what happened again last year, where the Colts just assumed Matt Pryor would be a good left tackle. They assumed Danny Pinter would be good at right guard, and it blew up in their face. So there's still plenty of guys out there. It depends on what their market is. You may have to overpay a little bit for some, but if you're bringing in a rookie quarterback, you don't want him running for his life, because then how is he really supposed to develop if all he's trying to do is worry about the pressure that's coming into his face? You need to do everything you can to make sure this offense is a good environment for a young quarterback to earn his stripes, and not kind of throw him into a hellacious pocket when you have pass rushers coming from every which way. So I mean, I don't think it's as bad as the cornerback situation is for the Colts, just because of the sheer amount of bodies that they do need at that position. But I would put right guard as maybe 1B as far as the needs for this team currently.
Yeah, I agree. And again, guys, we might be overreacting because they might take Osiris Torrance or John Michael Schmitz or Cody Mock or whatever there at 35 and plug them in at right guard, and we'll feel okay about the starter. But a big part of free agency is bringing in veterans so you don't feel the need to have to take one of those guys at 35. Like, if they're the best player available at 35, take them. Great, awesome. And then have an even better starting offensive line with good depth behind. But go out and get some free agents so you don't feel the absolute need to have to draft that position high. That's kind of for both those positions, cornerback and wide receiver, or quarterback and right guard. And that me's trying to segue into my next position here, wide receiver. Yes, they did sign Isaiah McKenzie today, but still, the starters right now are Michael Pittman Jr., Alec Pierce, and I guess Isaiah McKenzie in the slot. And then depth, you have Ashton Dulin, Mike Strawn, Christian Wilkerson, Malik Turner, and Vincent Smith. Now, I will say there's at least a lot of guys here who have some NFL experience. So Wilkerson played a little bit with the Patriots. Malik Turner played a little bit with the Cowboys. Smith a little bit with the Buccaneers. And Strawn, obviously, with the Colts. But you have 4 locks there in Dulin, McKenzie, Pierce, and Michael Pittman Jr. Outside of that, like, the rest of the guys are kind of expendable. Maybe if they have a great camp, they can make the team. Like, I feel like you need another like legitimate body in that wide receiver room.
I think so too. And I don't think you want to all kind of going off of the point you made about right guard. I don't think you want to go into the draft kind of hoping that you can get a wide receiver that can contribute right away, especially when you're not going to pick one in the first round. You're picking a quarterback in the first round. There are still some guys out there in the wide receiver market that I think can contribute right away and even kind of leapfrog Isaiah McKenzie as a starter. And Chris Ballard said it directly at the combine that he wanted to add depth at the wide receiver position. That's something that they absolutely needed to do. Well, you brought back Ashton Dulin. That's a great start. you bring in Isaiah McKenzie. That's also a good depth piece, but then you lose Paris Campbell. So you're kind of still at that point where you would need, I would think, probably at two more guys. Could be the combination of a rookie and a free agent is kind of where I'm leaning towards, but you still need help at that position, probably both as a starter and then as some depth.
Yep. And coming up, guys, we are going to talk about where we can find some of that help in free agency. Even though it is slim pickings, there are still some free agents available for the Indianapolis Colts. But first, you've heard us talk about this mobile game, and if you've ever thought you'd make a good GM, then you've got to give this game a try. It's not as easy as you might think to create a dynasty. When you play Ultimate Football GM, you get to control and manage every strategic aspect of your team as you play through seasons and lead your team to glory, trying to build a historic dynasty. In my opinion, I was well on my way to winning our staff league before my team owner gave me the boot. I wasn't as bad as Jake, but I also got fired as well. So, Jake guaranteed a championship. I didn't ever guarantee one. I tried to go a little bit more safe, and I still got fired. So you guys really have to be good at this game if you want to win a championship. Free agency just started here in reality, and with Ultimate Football GM, you're responsible for controlling the whole thing and molding your team from top to bottom. Locked On Colts listeners get a 100% free boost to their franchise when using promo code Locked On in all caps in the game store. That's Locked On, all caps. Make sure you check it out today. To download the game, just visit ultimate-gm.com or look it up in the app stores. That's ultimate-gm.com. Ultimate Football GM. Start your dynasty today. All right, Andrew. So let's start with corner. Corner is obviously the biggest one here. Again, wide receiver and right guard, we're saying they might need like one body each from free agency. Like corner, it feels like they need at least like two more bodies, just veteran bodies, and then still probably go in the draft for another one too. Like they just need a lot of pieces here at corner. Now I'm going to let you start because obviously there's one guy I'm going to say if you don't, but what are some guys on the market that you think could fit the Colts and kind of be bargains at this point?
Yeah, so I honestly think my favorite that's currently on the market is Shaquille Griffin. Shaquille Griffin had a little bit of a down in Jacksonville last year. I mean, he was hurt, definitely didn't play up to his standard, and now he's on the open market, but he's only 27 years old, and he was drafted to Seattle to kind of play in a similar system as what the Colts are running with Gus Bradley. So the Colts could sign him on a 1-year prove-it deal if he doesn't have the best market, or even maybe a 2-year deal, kind of like they gave Stephon Gilmore. And I think that'd be just huge towards this team to get somebody in there. A guy's name that's been floated around a lot is Marcus Peters, and I think that's because of what Chris Ballard has done recently and going out and signing Stephon Gilmore, signing Xavier Rhodes, kind of older cornerbacks who are on the tail end of their careers. I'm not sure if that's going to be the same mold this year because I think the Colts are in a different spot and they're going a different direction, more building for 2024 and 2025 than just 2023. And then I think this is the guy that you have on your list, and I'm really interested to hear your opinion on if a reunion is possible, and that's Rocky Sin. I'm a huge fan of Rocky Sin. I saw him, every single year get better and better, and he had his best season with the Colts before they traded him last offseason for Yannick Ngakoue. So realistically, do you think a reunion with the Colts and Rocky Sin is possible?
So let me address all the guys you mentioned here. Yeah, Rocky Sin obviously would be my absolute favorite. Like, he's just a good corner, man. It's just the two things that I keep coming back to that hurt are the Colts traded him away for a reason. They value him as a corner and they love him. Like Chris Ballard loves everything he is. But at the end of the day, Chris Ballard loves turnovers. That's why Isaiah Rodgers Sr. is getting a lot of run at corner. Well, we had to push him to get more run last year, but that's why he's gotten a lot of run the last couple of years because he's a playmaker. Same with Kenny Moore. Same with Stephon Gilmore when he came in. These are playmakers. And Rocky Sin, for everything good he does at corner, is not a playmaker. And that's why they moved on from him. That's one of the reasons why they moved on from him. And then, too, remember, it takes two to tango. And maybe Rocky Sin definitely has some great connections with this locker room. But do you want to come back to a team that just traded you away? It's kind of tough. So I would love it. I love Rocky Sin. I really, really want him back in Indy. But we'll see. Maybe they come back around and they're able to get him back here. Marcus Peters, I think, is a signing that makes more sense the last couple years. I just don't think with the way we've seen the Colts operate this offseason, giving Ebukam, who's like a 27-year-old guy, a multi-year deal, Matt Gay, a multi-year deal. Taven Bryan, a former first-round pick who's still a bit younger, giving him a contract. They're kind of giving guys who are in their mid to late 20s contracts and hoping that they hit their potential. I don't think that's a Marcus Peters deal. This is something that Chris Ballard of 2020 or 2021 would do. So I'm with you. I don't think that makes the most sense. Now, Shaquille Griffin, that falls right in there. 27-year-old who had some good football back in early part of his career, goes to the Jaguars, kind of falls off, get him back in that similar system. And then, I heard that his potential market's going to be a 1-year deal up to $10 million. I think that's right in the Colts wheelhouse. Like, I think that makes sense money-wise for them. You can load it with incentives. So it's probably only like a $4 or $5 million cap hit in year one. Like, I think that makes a ton of sense. We'll see if they're big buyers when it comes to him this offseason. I just know 2 years ago when he hit the market, Indy was really, really interested. They just couldn't get up to that price that he got with the Jaguars. So we'll see. With the declining cornerback market, I think that one's a really real possibility, and that might be who they're waiting on. So great pull. I think that's the most likely one. Let's go to wide receiver now, Andrew. Who do you like at wide receiver that's still out there and could kind of fit this Colts team and, maybe be the starting slot from day one?
I think the big name out there is of course McCole Hardman, coming from the Kansas City Chiefs. I mean, he's got blazing speed, and now that we know that Chris Ballard is not allergic to smaller wide receivers, McCole Hardman isn't necessarily small, but he doesn't hit the 6 foot 200-pound threshold that we've seen Chris Ballard really stay at for most of his tenure in Indianapolis. I think McCole Hardman could also be one of the more expensive wide receivers still out there. So that could be something working against. DJ Chark, I think, is another interesting name, but Chark, it seems like he plays mostly outside, and I don't know if that would really fall into the Colts' plan since they have Pittman and out there, unless they want to move Pittman into more of a slot role, more possession type receiver role, and then you could have DJ Chark on the outside, and then it's just kind of intriguing. I don't know how this to happen, but Nelson Aguilar, I think that he's another guy with some speed. He's got inside-outside versatility. He does kind of struggle with some drops, but it doesn't seem like that really scares away the Colts from their wide receivers. But if his market is right, I know he's been taking some visits recently. Nelson Aguilar could also be an interesting fit as a veteran there in that Colts wide receiver room.
Yeah, I like it. I agree with all those names. I think they make a lot of sense. McCole Hardman would be really interesting because, one, I know Chris Ballard really likes to stick it to the Chiefs. Like, it's one of his favorite things to do. And even if it's just like little small ways, he has this like really weird like vendetta thing against it. Not like vendetta, but it's more like, haha, I pulled one over on you, my former employer, and stuff like that. It's never anything super serious, but taking one of their former high picks and making him work out here would be part of that, obviously. He might be a little expensive, and I think that's why he's still available, is because he probably wants more than what his market is dictating. But I could definitely see that as a fit. I like the other names you mentioned there. Richie James is another one I threw out there. I don't think he's signed with anybody yet. Had a really productive year with the Giants, and he's a guy where, again, him and Isaiah McKenzie could be really good wide receiver 4s and 5s while you get a rookie maybe in wide receiver 3 and just have a really strong rotation between those guys behind Alec Pierce and Michael Pittman Jr. So love all those names there. I mean, hopefully they grab another one, but it might be a draft thing. It might be where they go draft here. There's a couple names, obviously, to look in the draft there at wide receiver. Going to right guard now. Who do you like at right guard for the Colts, or just interior offensive line, because you can kind of move guys around a little bit.
Right. And I think the name that a lot of Colts fans have talked about is Dalton Reisner from the Broncos. He's mostly played left guard, I think, if correct me if I'm wrong, but he's obviously the big name out there on the market. And if the Colts are able to sign him, I think you're looking at the starter at right guard. But again, he's not going to come cheap. So it's going to be if they can agree on a number. But a guy that I think that is pretty feasible and someone that probably wouldn't come too expensive is Elijah Wilkinson from the Falcons. He's got plenty of experience at playing both guard positions. So if you want to get just strictly for competition, he can kind of be that swing guard, if that's even the proper term for it. But he'll push Will Fries and could even get some starting reps. But if not, he can back up both positions. And then some other names real quick is Trey Turner from the Commanders. I know that he's not a wow name, but he can certainly provide depth. And then David Edwards. David Edwards was a starting guard for the Rams past couple seasons. Had some real bad injury luck last year, so that's something the Colts are going to have to work through. But I do think there are still some solid veteran guards out there on the market that the Colts could bring in.
Yeah, I have heard some buzz with Wilkerson, so we'll see if Indy brings him in and maybe get something there. But I've heard they are kind of interested in him. David Edwards is an interesting pull because Wisconsin, we know Chris Ballard loves himself some Wisconsin guys, so we could totally see that one there. And one more name I'll throw out there is Connor McGovern, the Jets one. There's two Connor McGoverns, guys. There's two of them. I promise. I promise there are two different Connor McGoverns. One is from the Cowboys and just signed with the Bills. The other one played with the Jets, and now he's available. So I promise there is Connor McGovern that's still a free agent, has center and guard experience. He had a lot of starts there with the Jets. So those are some names I like there. We'll see, guys, if the Colts make any more signings. You know, it was funny. I was driving home from work today, and I was like, man, I could really use a Colts signing just to get something going. And then I looked at my phone, and when I was at a stoplight, I looked at my phone at a stoplight, and Isaiah McKenzie was signing with the Colts. And I was like, okay, there we go. We got one. And it's an interesting signing too. So we'll see if this continues the next couple of days. I'm sure they'll bring in some special teams guys, some competition guys as well. But that's all we have for today, guys. Make sure you're following at Locked On Colts, at Jake Arthur NFL, at Zach Hicks 2, and at Andrew Moore NFL on social medias. Also, subscribe to Locked On Colts podcast on YouTube or wherever you listen to your podcast. And before I really close this out here, Andrew, which pro days are you going to in the next couple of days? Because we got Jake at Ohio State tomorrow. I'm going to Maryland next week because that's where I live. I'm close to Maryland. Andrew, which ones are you hitting up?
I'm going to make the trip up north to South Bend, Indiana to go watch Notre Dame's pro day. So see Michael Mayer, Isaiah Foskey work out, and some others. So it's going to be a fun time.
There we go. So make sure you guys are tuning into horseshoehuddle.com and also over at the Horseshoe Huddle YouTube channel, also at Locked On Colts on Twitter and Locked On Colts YouTube channel, because we're going to be covering a lot of these pro days, guys. I'm sure we'll have Andrew on to talk about the Notre Dame one sometime. But thank you guys for making Locked On Colts your first listen every day. Now make your second listen Locked On NFL Scouting with the Draft Dudes. From free agency to the draft, salary cap management, and more, join NFL experts Kyle Krabs and Joe Marino as they take you through what it's like to build a successful NFL franchise every Monday through Friday. Find Locked On NFL Scouting with the Draft Dudes wherever you get your podcast and on YouTube. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. We'll see you guys tomorrow.